バーの改札のシーン、
Yes
自動車のシーン、そして死のシーンだけをもう一度3つ並べて見せてください。
はい。その下です。死の直前の映像では消えてる。よくこんなのに気づきましたね、龍崎。
遺留品リストに封筒に見えるようなものはない。
では電車の中ということになる。
Hmm.
それとこのペンバーの最後のビデオ。
Looking back at his.
私には必死に電車の中を見ようとしているように見えるのですが、キラだったら面白いじゃないですか。
まさか。
私もまさかとは思います。
You're on the right track,
遠
El.
隔で死を操れるキラがわざわざ現場にいるはずがない。しかしそう考えるであろうことを逆手にとって大胆な行動に出たのかもしれません。
He did.
簡単に言えば僕が入院したりしたら八神局長の息子さんが入院した時、
Hmm.
犯罪者が死ななくなりましたねってことになるだろう。はい、こちらキラ事件特別一般情報主任の鈴木です。レイ・ペンバーの婚約者
Aha.
美空直美。どこかで聞いたのだな。彼女か。ロサンゼルス BB 殺人事件のフィアンセの死の翌日から彼女の消息がわからないそうです。
フィアンセが死んだら誰だって落ち込む。まさか
Yeah.
自殺。
いや、私の知っている美空直美は芯の強い優秀な
Yes.
FBI 捜査官です。むしろキラを捕まえることを考えるはず。
Spot on, El. Spot on.
ペンバーと一緒にいたそうです。何かを掴んだのかもしれない。
And now she's gone.
だとしたらキラに先を越されたのか。これよりレイ・ペンバーが日本で調べていたものだけに限って捜査します。
Ah.
捜査対象は2人の警察関係者とその周辺。
誰なんです、その二人というのは。
Oh.
北村次長とその家族、そして八神局長とその家族です。そしてその2つの家に盗聴器と監視カメラをつけさせていただきたい。
Uh-oh.
誰が調べても大丈夫にしておく必要があ
Just in time, Light.
しかし手先も器用だな。女にモテるだろう、ライト。
る。器用さなんて関係ないよ。器用より器量だ。
龍崎、その中にキラがいる可能性は。
10%、 いや 5% です。
そんなたった5%でそこまで。
いや、
It's not.
今までの捜査では怪しいと思えるものすらいなかったんだ。1% でも可能性があるならとことん調べるべきだ。
He knows.
局長。
いいでしょう、つけてください。
Hell yeah, Chief Yagami.
家の隅々、バスルームからトイレまで見落としのないようにだ。
ありがとうございます。そのつもりです。
He's like, I was gonna do
局
it.
長、何を言ってるんですか。
やるなら徹底的にやらなければ意味のないことも。もう黙っててくれ。
すみません。
いや、いいんだ。すまん。
He's on edge now.
渡り、盗聴器カメラモニターの設置にどれくらいかかる？
明日以降で
Ah, Light's gonna find out, isn't he?
不在時間が分かればいつでも取り付けられます。
Oh, now this is interesting, right? This is bound to happen at some point. Oh. Is Ryu gonna notice? This is too good to be true, man.
二人でゲームしない？なあライト、ゲームだよ。
He knows it's something's off now.
まさかあんなことをしてるなんて。部屋に何か見られたくないものでもあるのか。
Oh, wow.
17歳ということを考えたらそんなに怪しむことではありません。私も意味なくやったことがあります。
おいライト、さっきから無視しやがって怒るぞ。おい
Yeah, he's checking.
は仕込まれていない。
ライト。
リュウク、家に監視カメラか盗聴器、
Ah,
両方だ。仕掛けら
of
れた
course he found out. Or had a hunch.
あの紙は僕が部屋に誰か入ったか確かめてると思わせるためのフェイクだ。実際はまずドアノブ。
ドアの
Hmm,
あのドアノ
smart.
ブはドアを閉めると水平の位置に自然に上がり、親や妹なら紙にすら気づかない。紙をわざわざ元に戻してるからこそ怪しいんだ。
Now it's getting interesting.
リンゴ？あ、監視カメラを通してみたら、
Oh,
口に入ってしまえばリンゴは見えないが、持っている時は宙に浮いて見えるんだ。
oh, that's
やっぱり死神は死なないから餓死もしない。
ちょっと待ってくれライト。俺にとってのリンゴっていうのはそうだな。人間でいう酒やタバコみたいなもので、ずっとないと禁断症状が。
どうしてもリンゴが食べたかったら
can't do it in the room or outside the house.
まずすべてのカメラの位置を把握する。もしかしたらリンゴを食べる資格くらいあるかもしれない。
Ah,
じゃあ行くよリュウク。
いや、俺はカメラを探さないと。
あの真面目な息子があんな
trying to make it look like it's normal.
17歳なら普通ですが、私には部屋に誰か入っていないか確かめていたのはこういう本があるからですと言い訳しているように見えるんです。
まさか龍崎、うちの息子を疑っているのか？
疑ってますよ。だからオタクと次長の家に盗聴器とカメラをつけたんですから。
こういう事態に備えてこんな本までいろいろ準備してきたんだ。
ライト。
渡り、各テレビ局に例のテロップを流すように指示してくれ。
わかりました。
He is like Alfred.
何？裏事件に対し
Oh, he's trying to get his reaction.
総勢1500
But he's too smart for that.
捜査員を日本に派遣することに決定。
このリビングにもカメラはついているはず。
Can't react.
このニュースが本当であろうとなかろうと、これを見せて反応を見ようということか。L、最初の時と手口が同じだ。こんな発表をしたら意味がない。送り込むならこっそり入れ、こっそり操作させるべきだ。極秘で操作してた FBI でさえあんな目にあったのに、これじゃその二の舞になる。だからこれは大げさに報道してキラを動揺させようという警察の作戦さ。でもこれじゃキラにもバレバレじゃないのかな。
I like that.
賢いですね。
受験勉強の夜食だよ。
Oh, is this a potato chip scene?
ライト。
Oh.
カメラ全部探し出したぜ。全部で60人。
Oh.
やっぱり L だ。宣戦布告の時に死刑囚を椅子に平気で座らせたり、奴も限度ってものを知らない。
Okay, bro, you can't say that.
俺どこでリンゴ食うの？
そうはいかないよ L。そこまでだ。だからこの場合、僕が何の情報も得ていない時に新しく報道される犯罪者が死んでいけばいい。
まずい、禁断症状が。
やってやるよ L。 どう見ても勉強している受験生を装いながら僕はデスノートで殺すことができる。右手で方程式を解き続け、左手で名前を書き、ポテチを取り食べる。
That's absurd. Go on, L. Notice something.
これで僕の知り得なかった犯罪者が40秒後には心臓が
Right.
先ほど今日9時のニュースで初めて報道された横領容疑の銀行員が取り調べ中に、そしてひったくり犯が留置場で2人とも心臓麻痺で亡くなりました。
キラだ。
息子さんは7時半過ぎから11時現在まで勉強しかしていない。キラは殺人に顔と名前が必要。そのニュースを見ていなかった者はキラではないか。
うちの家族はこれで
No, not that easily.
今日のキラは随分罪の軽いものを報道されてすぐに殺しましたね。そしてカメラをつけて初日だというのに、八神家は面白いほどすんなり白だわ。
言われなくてもって。
Surely he took that out.
でしょ？
はいはい。
He couldn't slip up, could he?
今日もいい天気だ。
しかし自分のためなら手段を選ばないというか、気前がいいというか、あの小型液晶テレビ3万9800円だろ。
Right, it's gone now. I thought maybe his mom might take it out. Ah. Right then. So yeah, that was a great episode. It really was. And just like that, Light and L are just face to face almost, right? There's not much separating them at this point. You know, some of the stuff that happened in this episode, I was not expecting to happen for at least a few more episodes, right? But again, you know, that's the bombastic pacing of this anime. Things just keep moving, right? Nothing lingers, as I said in the last episode, or the discussion in the last episode. Things just, yeah, you know, snappy pacing. Got to keep it moving. So yeah, you know, also in that sense, I think it's, I mean, at this point in time, I think L must know that, or he must have a strong suspicion that, you know, that Light Yagami is Kira. But of course, at this point in time, he can't, you know, straight up point fingers at him, right? Because he needs to prove it. And he's not just going to, you know, put that out there just yet, right? He's going to need some more time to really pinpoint that this is Kira. Because there's telltale signs in this episode that L is picking up on some of these things that are going on, you know, and especially some of these things that have been set up for some time now, right? The psychological and emotional profiling. Things are starting to fit in, right? A suspect is starting to fit in to that description of his, or that profile of his. And I feel like he's seen and experienced enough of Light Yagami's demeanor and mannerisms at this point in time, and how he reacted to being under surveillance. I think L is clever enough to know at this point. And there's also a few signs in the episode that L, you know, they're subtle, but like you could tell that L is thinking something, right? And the most prominent one is right after Light decides to, you know, say something about the news flash. I think that was a slip up. That was a misstep. He shouldn't have said anything, really. But because I think him speaking out on that, you know, probably added another notch, or really solidified L's suspicion of Light Yagami. You know, Light just couldn't hold it, could he? He knew that L is listening in, and he's seeing him, right? He simply had to take the chance to take a jab at L, right? Taunt L. That was so clear that he was trying to, you know, agitate or take a shot at L. But I think that was a misstep. I think he slipped up there. He shouldn't have said anything. And now, you know, and of course, you know, the scene I was talking about is a subtle scene, but his reaction to that, you know, it's like a close up of L's face, and he's just like, you know, like he didn't make that noise, but like you could just tell, you know, the close up of his face and his reaction to that moment. I don't think Light should have said anything there. Right before that happened, I even said, oh, he's too smart. He's too smart to react to this. But he did react to it, right? He really played down this plan. Even though he even knew that they are trying to get a reaction out of him, that L is trying to get a reaction out of him by putting this on TV at the moment, you know, knowing that he's sitting right there and he's going to see it. Yet he still gave a reaction to it, right? He had to take that jab at L. So I think L knows at this point in time that, yeah, Chief Yagami's son is the prime suspect, but he's going to keep it to himself, right? Until he has some substantial proof, right? And he's not going to give up on this lead. I think, you know, from this point on, he might even, you know, hide some of his investigation from Chief Yagami, right? It's possible. You know, has to do his own testing and, you know, do some more investigating on his own. In that sense, he could maybe even use Chief Yagami to bait Light even more, right? And also, you know, this is established a long time ago now, but he already established that it must be some type of student, right? yeah, you know, Light kind of tried to deviate from that, or try to get them off of that. But I think L still has that in his mind. Like, he's established that at this point he's not just going to give up on that, right? And here you have the perfect student, right? This intelligent student in Light Yagami, right? So the moment L starts noticing Light Yagami and his mannerisms and his demeanor and just how intelligent he is, right, and some of the suspicious behavior, you surely L is starting to really place Light Yagami as Kara at this point, right? I said there was a misstep by L. Sorry, not L. Like, I keep mixing these two up. Yin and Yang, right? But I think there was another misstep. I think his alibi was kind of soft, and L saw right through it. Right, the whole alibi of, oh, he was just kind of being super careful because he's got dirty magazines that he's trying to read in private. L didn't buy that, right, and he kind of called it out as it's happening, right. Oh, this is normal behavior, right? But it was so on the nose that he's tippy-toeing, and he's trying to set up traps on his door so he could look at dirty mags. Everything that was happening at that point, Al was just quite suspicious of it. He even made a note of, or he even made a point of noting that, oh, just as soon as the surveillance gear goes in, almost instantly or so quickly, all suspicion is kind of disappeared from the Yagami household, right? So you could tell, well, Al can tell that clearly something is going on here to remove this suspicion, right? So quickly after the gear goes in. And, even Chief Yagami is kind of a bit baffled by that. There's that shot of him looking quite confused, right? Or concerned. And, he even brought up, again, he made a point of noting that, there's 2 new killings just now, as Light is just studying there, right? But he also noted that these 2 killings are just minor crimes, or these 2 criminals that just died because of Kira, apparently, they happen to be minor crimes, right? Light couldn't pick and choose, right? He had to write down the names of whoever came on the news. In that little LCD portable television he had in his potato chip bag. More on that later, I guess. But again, I don't feel like Light was able to fool or throw off suspicion at all. I think L is going to be even more on his tail after this, because everything that happened after installing the cameras and stuff, it was just too suspicious to L, right? How it all played out and how smoothly it all suspicion kind of just disappears by the end of this, right? And how quickly it disappeared, all suspicion, that is. And in that sense you can understand that Chief Yagami he wanted that potential burden or stain to be removed from his family name, and he instantly, there might have been relief as he heard about those 2 new killings, right? As Watari reported to L. So there might have been relief to hear this. Oh, okay, good. Not good, but good in the sense that, okay, these killings are still going on. And look, L and I are both sitting here, and Light, my son, is doing nothing. He's just studying, he's not doing anything suspicious. So in that sense, you can understand if he does feel a bit of relief in that moment. But, he's an intelligent individual himself, and he can see that Al hasn't completely given up on this, right? That the suspicion of his. So let's see how that plays out. And, imagine being in his position, Chief Yagami's position. Some type of doubt must have crept in, right? It's like, oh, hold up. How much do I really know my intelligent son, right? And for the first time, he's seeing some out of character behavior, right? Again, Light tried to establish that this is all to have a look at dirty magazines in private. But yeah, he's seeing a different side of his son, even if he doesn't have any clue at this point that it's Kira himself right under his nose. So he is starting to see a different side to his son. Let's see how that plays out, right? Surely there's going to be conversations that go on. Chief Yagami himself might have some interesting things to say to Light or ask Light, and maybe Light might start noticing that. Right? I said L might continue this investigation on his own at some points. It's possible that Chief Yagami might continue this on his own, right? In an attempt to clear his family name, right? But also in that sense, he is just so impressive. He, as much as, that kind of put him on edge, right? And maybe even embarrassed him a bit. Perhaps offended him a bit that his family was being shadowed. But he still realized that there's a job to do here. And even though the odds given by L are, 10 and 5%, those are high enough. Even 1% chance, even a 1% chance is high enough to take that risk, right? Or be thorough enough. And he took that, he took that chance. He didn't, his commitment to the cause didn't shake, right? And he said, yeah, let's do it. Even though he was agitated and on edge, and he even snapped at Matsuda and the other guy, right? And you can see he's like, oh, I'm sorry, right? He snapped. Understandably, right? In that sense, it's a high tension situation to all of a sudden find out that, oh, okay, all of a sudden, from the entire planet, it came down to Japan, then it came down to the 142 members of the task force, and then it came down to just two, right? Two parties or two groups that Ray was shadowing, right? So in that sense, L has really narrowed it down, right? From the whole planet to Japan to the 142 members of the task force, and that point is I think he mentioned that point maybe in the first 3 or 4 episodes, that it must be someone who's attached to the task force. But again, at that point, 142 of them, right, in the task force. But now it dwindled down to just these 5 or 6 members of the task force. And then, of course, the sudden disappearance of Naomi, and I was so happy that she, even after her disappearance and her death, she's gonna play a part. She played quite a substantial part because her disappearance kind of streamlined the investigation and kind of narrowed down the canvas to Ray and the 2 parties he was investigating or shadowing, and of course one of them being Chief Yagami's family. And I love that he was so complimentary of Naomi. Clearly he knew, or even though they didn't really have that much direct connection, he was able to read her enough to know that, this is not the type of person who is just going to give up, right? He almost instantly, crossed out the possibility of her committing suicide. And he instantly surmised that she's the type of person who would go after Kira if she did, or if Kira did target one of her loved ones, right? And in this case, that is how it did go down, right? Ray. So yeah, in that sense, the last episode and her slip up is even more unbelievable at this point, to me at least. It's a bit more far-fetched even after knowing how highly L rates Naomi. So I do think that she deserved better than that. After being so careful about everything. And then, in the end, just making the exact same mistake her fiance made. I just can't buy it. I still can't buy that. I feel like that character of Naomi was kind of done a bit of a disservice to, take out like that after establishing her as such an intriguing and intelligent character. Now, that one member of the task force, of course, he put up the umbrella so he didn't see him. But now that Naomi is, kind of still part of this investigation and kind of still guiding some of this investigation, even, after her disappearance, how about the receptionist at HQ, right? This episode really brought the idea of cameras and surveillance to the forefront. So, yeah, surely Elle might, go in that direction and kind of, or find out that, okay, so she did show up at HQ, and if he looks at the footage, you've got a light standing right there. Unless, of course, that's just done and they don't look at that aspect of it anymore. The receptionist seeing Naomi on that day, or just a few days before her disappearance. I do hope that gets brought up. But again, if that does get brought up and light is there, it doesn't. I think they can do that. It doesn't quite confirm him as Kira or anything, but of course, him being right there beside the person who has disappeared now, and who happens to be the fiance of someone else who died because of Kira, it would make things really exciting and interesting and intriguing, right, for Elle. But also, Light himself figured out a few things, right? At this point in time, he knows that they've narrowed it down to, or they have enough information at this point to narrow it down to just the people Ray was shadowing, right? So he knows he's under the hotlight now, right? He knows he's under pressure or under the microscope at this point in time. So in that sense, that whole plan of having pages and pages filled out of Kira killings ahead of time is going to be crucial at this point, right? Because he can't. Because now that he is under the microscope, he has to try to act as normal as possible, or as normal as a 17-year-old does. Though, of course, acting so normal and being so on the nose can also be suspicious, as Al kind of saw right through it, right? The whole dirty magazine concept. But also, jumping back to L, he can constantly, expand or improve that psychological and emotional profile he has for Kira. He even, earlier in the episode, or in the beginning of the episode, he even put it together that, okay, even though he is quite careful, there are moments that he decides to be bold, right? And he even thinks that Kira himself must have been on that train. And Al already established that Kira doesn't like to lose, right? He has a childlike mentality in that sense, much like Al, as Al admitted. But he doesn't like to lose, and he again, that was the thing I said in the last episode, right? If there's one chink in the armor, it is the arrogance, the uncontrollable arrogance. That's the one unpredictable thing about Light. Even though he keeps everything airtight, the one thing he cannot control is that arrogance. And it's Al kind of saw an example of that again at the end there. He clearly saw that as, I think, listen, you can't, if the audience is kind of picking up on this, that it was Light kind of having a jab or taking a jab at L and taunting him, then of course you have to assume that L is also understanding that, right? L is meant to be this legendary investigator, right? So he knows that there is this thing about him that he has to try to get one over L. Again, man, I do think arrogance might be his downfall at some point. That arrogant attitude of just wanting to be on top or coming out on top, and letting his foes know that he beat them, that he bested them, right? And speaking of Light and his clever plans, I suppose the bag of potato chip, they didn't show him buying it in this episode or anything, so it looks like he had that in place just in case. I guess he opened up a bag of potato chips and he put this in there, this LCD screen, and he resealed it and he put it alongside the other snacks. Now, isn't that kind of risky though? how could you know for sure that his sister might not grab that potato chip bag? Maybe she doesn't like that flavor, right? But again, even if someone does find out, it's not like they can say, "Oh, Light, did you do this?" They would just assume, "Oh, what the hell is this?" This bag of potato chips happens to have this LCD screen in it. So yeah, I guess in that sense, he has a lot of different things in place, right? Different plans, and different plans of action in place. Of course, they showed that he's got a secret stash of dirty magazines, and he said, okay, this is the reason I had them in the first place, right? In this kind of situation. And then, of course, this plan of having, bag of potato chips and he put an LCD screen in it, and clearly he did this before this whole, the whole camera situation, right? Being under surveillance. That one, if I'm being honest, that one is a bit far-fetched, the bag of potato chips and the LCD screen, unless he did it in the span of this part of the story, after finding out that, yeah, there's cameras in place now and you're under a microscope. They showed him going to a store, but that was him buying magazines, right? Or maybe that was him buying that LCD screen. But, the packaging kind of looked like the packaging for a magazine. So I don't know. But yeah, I got to this infamous potato chip scene. It was quite absurd. And I suppose that's the reason it's so iconic, right? That to the naked eye, it might seem like he's just having a potato chip, but then at the same time, he's taking people's lives, or he's killing people, right? So it is quite absurd. Something as simple as having a potato chip on one end, and then on the other end, he's just, about to kill someone. It was quite dramatic. I suppose it could also be because of the dramatic nature of that presentation, right? They've shown that scene a few times of him dramatically writing names in, or at least the anime, really making a dramatic situation out of it. But again, you're not gonna throw L off your trail at this point. At this point in time, he has come across an individual that fits so perfectly, right? He's not, at this point in time, he's not going to forget about Light. He's just not, right? He's intelligent enough to know that, okay, this kid, essentially, this young adult does appear to be Kira, but now I have to be careful and really start collecting hard evidence, right? And I have to come up with a plan of action to make him slip up. And I brought this up in the last 2 episodes, I think, maybe the last one or the one before, that sooner or later he's gonna, come across Chief Yagami's exceptional, talented, intelligent student son, right? I just didn't think it was gonna happen this soon. Now, so staying on the task force, you can see they're all quite tired, right? Perhaps pulling all-nighters. And of course, it's that type of case, that type of situation that it requires all their time, or as much of their time as possible. Even Chief Yagami was kind of, going in and out. But you have Watari there to, keep them energized, right? It appeared to be ice cream, right? So a lot of sugar, right, to keep you energized. And in that sense, once again, L's sweet tooth is on display, in the last episode, or the episode before, it was the last episode. No, it was the one before. He's putting in those sugar cubes, 5, 6 of them, maybe even more. And now he's got this ice cream, and note how he likes to lick it from top to bottom. He's just got so many strange tics, right, and mannerisms. I love to see it, though. Of course, he's still kind of squatting on the sofa, right? Again, doesn't quite human like the others around him, right? Or doesn't really carry himself like the humans or the people around him. But yeah, once again, Watari is there. Again, a strong resemblance to Alfred in his demeanor and the things he does for L. Surely this isn't just a coincidence, right? This parallel to Batman or Bruce and Alfred to Watari and L. Unless it is. And then you've got Chief Yagami, who kind of reminds me of Commissioner Gordon, right? So in that case, Light, in this Batman parallel, I guess Light might be the Joker, right? Joker or Two-Face, right? Two-Face could be a good one. But yeah, I'm liking this parallel a bit. But again, that raises questions about this L and Watari relationship. How come? Like, again, it's so strange that they are as close as they are, and that Watari does all these things for L. So again, backstories. I love backstories. If you've seen my content for some time now, you know how much I love backstories, right? But staying on this topic of needing sugar or sweet stuff constantly, is this something he kind of just he's so used to that he just kind of needs to function, right? Kind of a bit of an addiction, similar to Ryuk needing apples, and then they start showing us some of the symptoms once Ryuk doesn't get those apples. Jushi, so he certainly needs those apples. Now, yeah, I guess could it have a similar effect on L if he doesn't constantly feed on these sweet things, right? Could he also start to showcase some symptoms? So let's see if this is anything substantial at all, or if it's just another tick of L, to always be constantly consuming sugar or sweet things, right? Again, much like Ryuk. Now, Ryuk's symptoms, at one point, he's got the full-on, bright red eyes as he's kind of freaking out, right? And he's doing the handstands. Could that play a role, him freaking out and showcasing these symptoms? Could that make him act out of character at some point? Let's see. And of course, this is the first episode I did check out the opening, and I have a few things to, talk about. I didn't do a frame by frame. I might do a frame by frame in the next one, but there's a few really noticeable things in the opening. And again, the apple, the forbidden fruit. Now, I think I've covered most of the things I wanted to talk about in this episode. So yeah, let's move on to that opening. So like I just mentioned, apples are featured prominently. Again, the forbidden fruit. And in this case, Light is the one who keeps kind of chomping on those apples. Light is also depicted, with his red eyes and the red hair. I think even in this episode, there's a shot of Light, and they've got that red pupil thing going on, right? I think it's more of like a artistic choice, right, to show that from time to time. This devil on earth, this god of death on earth. There's a great shot of Naomi, and she's got Ray in her lap. I feel like that's also based on some kind of real life painting or piece, right? Just the positioning, it really reminded me of something. I just can't quite place it at this moment in time, but it did, the framing of that looked quite familiar to me. And speaking of parallels or nods to real life creations or art, you've got the creation of Adam, right? You've got Ryuk and like going tip of the finger to tip of the finger. So that was actually a really cool shot. But I think the standout moment from the opening has to be this character. They haven't introduced this character yet, this female character. But clearly she's going to come in at some point. And, the feeling I got from that is that, she's kind of lost in life, right? And that she has no purpose in life, right? Or she doesn't have a path to follow. And of course she sees the light, right? And then, literally sees light, if you know what I mean. Even in that frame, you can see kind of some light coming in from one side of the frame, and then you've got Light Yagami himself standing there. So I like that framing of the shot. So she sees the light, and perhaps finds her purpose as possible, because they also show me Light kind of lending out his hand, much like he did with Naomi, right? Lends out his hand. So yeah, let's see how this plays out. My first thought was perhaps a love interest, but given how Light is this someone he could manipulate, right? Seeing that she is depicted as such a lost soul, perhaps. Could he manipulate this person to further his cause, to aid in his crusade and use her as a tool, perhaps? Or, it could be more than that. Could actually be a love interest. Let's see. And I think one of the other standout shots is the final shot. It's one of Light, right? And then you've got it appears to be Shinigami behind him. But of course, his face is covering that Shinigami's face, as to almost depict him as the god of death, or Shinigami, in that sense, right? And that's a concept I've kind of brought up a few times since episode 1, that he's establishing himself as the god of death on Earth. And the Shinigami Ryuk even kind of named him a better Shinigami than most of his Shinigami friends in the Shinigami realm. Oh, also, the Shinigami crew kind of made an appearance, and also the task force made an appearance in the opening. Now, yeah, that shot, again, it kind of lends to that theory or thought that, the end game could be Light having to spend the rest of his life, rest of his life. There is no lifespan after that, right? If you do make it to the Shinigami realm, or if you end up there. So yeah, like I said, it would not shock me if the end game of this is Light, turning into Shinigami himself, or spending the rest of his life in the Shinigami realm. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that opening. I might kind of go frame by frame for the next one and see if I can catch something else. I feel like there was a few shots in there that there's a few shots in there that kind of made me not, want to slow it down. There's a couple of shots. There's a bloody hand, and there appear to be some numbers on the side. I feel like I don't need to see that shot again. So in that sense, I kind of, skipped out on the frame by frame for that reason. But there was enough there to catch on just one watch through to give enough thoughts on it, right? So I think maybe that might be enough, and I shouldn't go digging too far into that opening. But yeah, that's about it for this episode. If you enjoyed it, consider dropping a like. Consider dropping some comments. Give me your thoughts. As long as they're spoiler free, of course. Thank you. Please and thank you. If you're interested in early access to the next episode right now, or maybe even full length to this episode right now, head on over to the Patreon page. Check it out. Check out some of the listings. Perhaps something else could even catch your eye. There is other content on my channel, and in terms of anime, there's another one, Shingeki. So if you're into that, check that out. It's one of the really big things on my channel. And consider checking out the pinned comment. It has links to my social media, my Patreon page, and if there needs to be an update, it usually goes in the pinned comment. So consider checking that out from time to time. Right then, that's about it for this episode. That was quite enjoyable. I really liked that episode. So yeah, I hope to see you soon for the next one. Take it easy.